All right, guys. Hi, I'm Micaiah Johnson. Let me see, how am I gonna do this? I am going to, can I stand here and still move that? Hold on here. How was he just moving the slide around? Okay, as long as I can move this way. All right. Well, I'm going to get started, but I know we have a handful of people on Zoom as well. But if anyone is comfy, I would love to hear kind of why you guys landed in this room for today. I know it's the end of the conference, end of the day. So just because there wasn't a lot of description in what we were going to talk about with occupational therapy, I will give you a quick synopsis that I am a sensory processing therapist. That's kind of my bread and butter. That's what today is going to be focusing on, is sensory processing. So I'm an OT, but that's kind of my expertise. But OT is outstandingly broad. So I would love to hear, if anyone's comfy, why you landed in this room. And, maybe that will help us navigate if there are any certain directions we should go inside of this conversation. Oh, sure. Okay. Anyone comfy with that, or?
Well, I think I'm going here because I'm going to school for occupational therapy,
Okay.
but I also have a dad and I guess technically myself are affected by a leukodystrophy. So it's kind of interesting on both aspects of, I'm interested in occupational therapy, that's what I'm going to school for, and the leukodystrophy side of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
My son is affected, and one of the biggest flags for us was his sensory processing and his fine motor function. And his OT said, go to that session for me. So
Okay, got it, great.
My name's Carlisle Kerbo. My son is 6 and he has Krabbe disease, and we're from a rural area, so I was just coming to try to learn some things that could help us better care for him back at home.
I am a leukodystrophy parent, but she passed away years ago. But I now have 5-year-old twins with autism, and we just found out. So I'm just here to learn about what can help them.
So I have a granddaughter with autism and a grandson that has the adrenal. So he's just going to be starting therapy probably in a couple of weeks. So I'm just trying to see some of the stuff I can work on with him.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I was introduced to leukodystrophy from a client. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you.
So I have a leukodystrophy, and last year I started OT, so I want to know more, like understand better how it can help me, and maybe give some information to my OT so she can like go deeper in that topic.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. No.
Hi, I am here. So, I think it's always a great opportunity to learn something new and see whatever we can be doing. And Aiden is probably here because I said we should be here. How's that?
There we go. Well, thanks, guys. All right, so I was introduced to this diagnosis. I was going to go stand over here. Probably about, I don't even know, maybe 8 years ago, 7 years ago, through a client. And so that was a way that it was a word I'd never heard before. until I started working with a client and, went through the deep dive of discovery of learning as much as I could, and trying to see how sensory supports, where the clinic that I was working at was focused primarily on autism, and that was pretty much the sensory world 10, 15 years ago, right? Is that sensory equals autism. And slowly, thankfully, we've learned that all of us have a sensory profile. All of us have sensory preferences. And this is not just an intervention that is supportive of one diagnosis. It's supportive for all human beings. And so I'm really thankful for that kind of turn in our medical community. And so through that client, I was able to slowly kind of understand and support the family with different tools that could be supportive. And to be truly honest, as many of you know, because that's the reason you're at this conference, is to learn specifically about leukodystrophy, the tools changed. What we used about in the beginning of our intervention, about 6 months later, because the sensory profile had changed, so did our intervention. So today, so that's my familiarity. Through that, I have connection with Keeley. I am a local OT to this area. I live only about 10 minutes away and have a small practice about 10 minutes away. My practice started off in the city, and pandemic and all the things, my family and I moved out here to Bloomingdale, which is a town, a few towns over from Itasca. And I needed a change. So serendipitously, we were in a home that had a fancy garage for me. But remember, we came from the city where having a driveway was luxury. So when we had a garage with windows in it, I was like, we can't park our cars in here. There are windows. There's carpet on the floor. There's something we can do with this garage. So my husband and I, through the pandemic, we rehabbed our garage, and I made sure that all of my employees in my city clinic had a home, and just myself came out to Bloomingdale and had a fresh start. And I was doing more management of all of my employees in the city, and went back to the roots and just started working with kids again. So that's what I do. A small clinic 10 minutes away from here. And so when I had connected with the Leukodystrophy Association just for more resources for my client a handful of years back, but we've kept in touch. And then when Keeley noticed that my clinic was so close to here, that's how she brought me this way to speak. So that's who I am. That's my story. We'll be focusing on sensory processing today, but a subsect of it, sensory processing modulation. Oh, goodness gracious. All of these things over here. This is my family. This picture is a little outdated, so I should change that. I haven't done this talk in a bit. So that's my husband, Travis, and my two boys, Crosby and Wells. I was in the kids' room this afternoon volunteering for a while, and Crosby joined me as well. And I wish I would have been able to upload my picture from today from the kids' room, because it was very, very cute. So Crosby and I were able to create something. I'll just jump to that really quick. This was last year in the kids' room, though. So we're going to talk about what is OT, but this was our OT session that we did today. So we did a sensory story time, and every page in our story had something that we were able to pull a sensory element through. So when there was a storm in the story, we were spraying water. When there was wind in the story, everyone made wind. When there were worms in the story, we pulled out shaving cream. We had all the kids and some of the grown-ups had shaving cream on their hands. We had dirt that we used, and then finally at the end of the story there was a spider web, and so we made a giant spider web. So we did that last year, and we did it again today, and there was lots of laughter. So this is a picture of what OT looked like last year and also similarly today. So what is OT? I think many of you know that answer, especially some of the comments that have already been shared that you have an OT or you're going into OT school or you want to learn more and share with your current therapist, right? So OT is super broad. There are, can work from neonatal to geriatrics. For me, I work in pediatrics. I specialize in sensory processing. And for all of OT, we're looking at occupation. We're looking at the desired occupations with everyday support, everyday activities. So dressing, eating, bathing, but also the client's personal interests and needs. So how does sensory processing go into that? Well, what we're going to talk about is our very dynamic sensory world. And truly, our sensory world impacts all of this because we're living in a dynamic sensory world. All of us right now have our auditory sense engaged from hearing me. Your postural muscles are engaged by sitting in a space in a chair. It might not be the most comfy chair, but you're sitting in it. You're organizing your body against it. So that is, we're living inside of our sensory world, right? And then for me, I do focus on play. So I'm a play-based therapist. Okay. So because we're going to focus on sensory processing, we'll do a quick quiz. And you were in this session last year too, weren't you? I remember. We had a good conversation afterwards. Okay, so I already know you're going to get a couple of these, but there are 8 sensory systems. In our dynamic world, there are 8 ways that we take in sensory information. 5 of them we learned in elementary school, and then there's 3 additional ones. Let's list out those 8. Can you guys pop quiz? What are our 8 sensory systems? Sight, yep. Yep. Smell, touch, taste. Okay, we got 3 more. Vestibular, we got our OT student. We got touch already, yep. But there's one that's very close to touch. It's close, and I'll take touch and I'll pull off of it. It's body awareness, proprioception. Are you guys familiar with that term? Body awareness. So body awareness is the idea of right now I can close my eyes and I know exactly where I am in space, and I can hold my this microphone and not drop it because I know just amount of force and modulation to use. This often can be a factor in an intervention that we're using quite a bit in terms of leukodystrophy for sure. Proprioception, is that something that you guys are familiar with your clinicians at all for body awareness support? Yeah, you have. And then our last one is interoception or interoception. And that's the sense of our internal organs. So that's our thirst, bowel, bladder, pain, thermal regulation, hot, cold, things of that nature. So we can't see it, right? It's all the signals, our internal signals that are happening. So all really important things, right, guys? The only way information about the outside world can reach us is through our sensory system. So when we're talking about a sensory processing disorder, we're talking about one of these sensory systems is interfering with the individual's ability to flourish, function, and feel safe. Now, you guys are going to hear me probably reference kids quite a bit because I work with kids, right? That's kind of when I think about my work, I think about kids. But again, all humans have a sensory system, and all of us could have ways that our nervous system is challenged by our sensory system. Should I take a peek at the chat? I see a few things over here. Are we all good? Oh, just perfect. These are a few more conversations to help us drive. Speed. Awesome. This is great. Okay, cool. Thank you for those comments. Okay. So here's our 8 sensory systems, right? So we already went through this. We're going to go back to this screen in a minute. That's my son Crosby. This is pre-pandemic, clearly, when we are in this giant ball pit. So we're going to come back to this screen in a little bit after we dive into some neurology. But what I want to add quickly to these senses is our visual system is not just visual acuity. Our visual system is also visual perception. So it's perceiving the details. It's visual tracking. It's seeing the differences between a B and a D. It's understanding depth, and it's understanding our visual world and then how to interact with it. So it's the perception side of it, not just the acuity side. Auditory, yes, it's noises, but it's also filtering out and understanding what is important to pay attention to. So filtering out the sound of the air conditioner and paying attention to my voice right now. Some individuals with auditory processing challenges, all sounds have the same weight of priority. So the sound of the air conditioner clicking on has the same weight and priority as someone talking, as the background noise in the hallway. So it's really hard to figure out what to pay attention to when every single sound can be clouding your attention and where you should be paying attention to. Tactile is your tactile system, but it's also your tactile perceptual system. So it's sticking your hand in your bag, looking for a quarter, and feeling a bunch of coins, and knowing the difference between a penny, a quarter, and a nickel. It's understanding and perceiving the tactile differences, not just that there's a coin, but the size of the coin to help us understand the subtle differences. That's our tactile perceptual system. Then we have taste and smell. Gustatory and olfactory. Vestibular is our sense of movement. So that is our, every time that our body is in motion and our head is in a different plane of movement, we're activating our vestibular system. You can activate it 3 ways: rotary, spinning, upside down, inversion, or linear, rocking back and forth. And then proprioception is that body awareness. And then interoception we talked about as well for the internal organ signals. Okay, you guys all good? You're with me? Okay, so we're gonna go here really quick. We're gonna talk about the actual process of sensory processing, the neurology behind it, what's happening in our brain and our nervous system. And then we're gonna go to back to those 8 sensory systems. And we're going to dive in a little bit more about the different things that you would see to know if there may be a challenge or not. To know if there could be a way that these senses are interfering, back with those 3 things we just talked about, for an individual to flourish, function, and feel safe. Okay, so this is the process of sensory processing. So sensory input comes in. So let's say my voice is the sensory input. So the sensory input comes in, the auditory input comes in. You process it and organize it. Okay, I should pay attention to that, filter out that, adjust myself in my chair so I can focus a little bit better, and respond. My response is attention. That's my response. How sensory processing is a challenge is when there's a breakdown in this input, in this system. So let's say we're not talking about my voice. We're talking about, we're really close to O'Hare over here. We're talking about sitting outside in the patio and an airplane flies over us. So that's the sound that comes in. The processing side of our nervous system goes, holy cow, what was that? The response is, I'm scared. That's too much. So the response may be fight or flight, avoidance, scared, fear, many different things because of that sound. So the sound came in, airplane sound, was a surprise. The processing is, and the interpreting it of, I heard a sound, what does that sound mean? Am I safe or not? The response could be, I'm not safe. And then that response could look a handful of different ways depending on the person. That could mean meltdown. It could mean cover my ears. It could mean distraction. It could mean look down. It could mean a handful of different things because fight or flight in individuals does not look the same across the board, right? On the same side, the sensory input could come in, plane noise, loud plane noise, and we're referencing one person, this plane noise overloads them. On the same side, that noise could come in and it's not heard, it's not registered because something else was more important to pay attention to. So the processing is, I didn't hear anything. The processing is there's nothing to process because I didn't even take that information in. So the response is avoidance, distraction, not cluing into potential safety risk because the processing was I didn't even hear anything. I wasn't even registering a sensory input because the registration wasn't there. So now we're going to add another layer to this sensory processing. It's modulation. Does anyone know modulation? Is that term familiar? Modulation? It's used often, right? And not just medically. The term modulation is used across the board in many different arenas. So how I'm referencing it today is kind of like modulation meaning organized, regulated, balanced, adjusted. That's kind of what I'm meaning when I'm saying modulated. So thinking of modulation in those terms, sensory input comes in. The processing is everything's good. I feel modulated, balanced, adjusted, regulated. The responses keep on going around with my everyday life. There are 3 different ways on the sensory challenge side that you could interpret different sensory information. For us today, we're only going to focus on under-responsive and over-responsive. Sensory craving is another term, but for parents, for the team in this room, the neurological differences between sensory craving and under-responsive is quite different, but the strategies that I would be coaching parents and professionals to use are very similar. So we're just going to kind of cram those 2 together, and we're going to talk about under-responsive and sensory craving as one, and we're going to think of that as our sensory seekers. And then over-responsive is our sensory avoiders. There's no perfect sensory profile. All of us have a different way that we may avoid or have preferences to different sensory experiences or look for more input of different sensory items that feel calming and regulating. So that's what we're going to dive into today. So for our 8 systems, sight, touch, vestibular, body awareness, you can be under or over for each of them, or you can be neutral. You're not just under responsive to all sensory input or over responsive to all sensory input. Each one is its own category. So you can be visually over responsive, but vestibularly under responsive, but auditorily over responsive, but taste neutral. That all makes sense? So there's like 100,000 different profiles that you could line up to be. So it's outstandingly complex, which means there's no like strategy of like, this is exactly what you should be doing because every profile is so different and unique. All right, we're doing okay. So inside of this same picture, and this is our last neurology slide, and then we're gonna go to more talking through the different senses. Back to the same picture, input, processing, response. For when the input is coming in, the sensory input's coming in, for our over responders, they're going to be the ones that are responding too much. They view things as threatening. They can be very rigid in routines. So noise comes in, cover their noise, right? That's gonna, the over responders, things are going to feel too much at that sign when the sensory input comes in. During the processing part, there's usually a strong memory of previous negative experiences. So there's a lot of avoidance in the processing part of the sensory input. Not responsive to trying new things, maybe more of our picky eaters, things of that nature. And then our overresponders may respond in more bigger and physical and emotional ways at times, more meltdowns or different items, fight or flight at times, when during that sensory processing experience. Our underresponders may not register the input at all. So they may need more input to respond, right? They may not pay attention to the input or respond at all. They may repeat from past experiences because they aren't registering that something prior was dangerous. And they may not always know how to respond because there isn't a lot of previous experiences that they're holding on to. All right. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to dive into these 8 systems, and we're going to talk about what it would look like to be over-responsive, what it would look like to be under-responsive. If anyone is comfy, and if you feel like you fall maybe on the over-responsive side, or if your child falls on the under-responsive side, and you want to be like, yep, that's me, feel free to share with us. Okay, so a visually over-responsive person is going to be avoidant of big crowds, going to be, more comfy, maybe wearing a hat, not wanting to have bright lights. Definitely would be like a needle in the haystack, like looking for those can see all the very specific details and maybe missing the big picture at times. Usually has very strong skills in Legos, engineering, different things like that, because it's those very detailed specifics that can build out. So that's our visual over responders. Excellent with details, excellent with those kind of organization, but may miss some of the bigger picture. Visual under responders are going to miss a lot of the details, right? We're going to go on the flip side. They're going to be maybe looking around the room. It's going to be kind of the deer in the headlights, where we're always in motion because we're visually trying to take everything in. May trip over steps because they aren't watching the details of space changes. So visual under responders may love going to a busy, crowded space because that's not feeling overloaded to them. That's exciting. That warrants, brings more energy and attention. So that's our visual under responders versus over responders. Do we have any visual over responders in here? Yeah? Yeah? You can. It usually can be linked to experience or how you're feeling through the day. So you could give me an example of how you can be both sometimes.
With what you said, for example, I can't be in places with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like very crowded because I see a lot of things and it's just like messy for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel I can go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But also I cannot see the details sometimes.
Yeah.
I need to see the big picture because, for example, my parents tell me, oh, look that bird at the door.
It's hard to zone in on that.
Know where they are pointing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I have both.
Yep. No, for sure. Okay. Interesting. And any examples for being under responsive? No? That I'm much more visually under responsive. I could be so clumsy sometimes, just bumping into everything. I truly don't see it. Auditorily over responsive. So auditory over responsive is going to be really avoidant of loud noises, right? So that's going to be, again, busier, louder places can bring moments of fight or flight. Because again, we're going back to that idea of flourish, function, and feel safe. Just those loud noises may create a feeling of unease or not safe because of the sensory experience of it all, right? So overloaded by loud noises, difficulty to really zone in on all of the auditory details, because the loud noises are kind of can be almost bring to a place of freezing almost as well. Also, what I have noticed too is often our loudest individuals, our loudest talkers, the ones that are often like making sounds with their noises, with sounds in their mouth and things like that, usually are auditorily overloaded. It's a way almost to control and feel at ease. If the individual can be louder of their environment, then it's a way to kind of regulate their own selves. So we can often, it seems counterintuitive, but almost our loudest individuals can be overloaded by auditory information. Our under-responsive auditorily are going to be the ones that are not always taking in auditory information. So I have a neurodivergent child, and I can quickly be saying his name 20 times, Crosby, and he truly hasn't registered it. Like he hasn't. I have to get in, make sure he sees me, Crosby. And oh yeah, Mom, what's up? Like he hasn't heard that because he's in his world, he's in his mind, and that voice just hasn't. My voice has not been registered and picked up. So those are our under-responsive sensory profiles. You guys have some nodding over there. You can relate to that, yeah. Selective hearing starts early. Right. So tactily under-responsive. Sure, I'm okay on time here. So tactile under-responsiveness, we're going to see a lot of touching things when you're walking through spaces. You're looking for ways to kind of create understanding of the world around you. Tactile and body awareness, the tactile and proprioception cues can be linked hand in hand very often. So our under-responsive individuals may not be cueing in if there is food on their face, things like that nature, maybe ready to kind of get muddy and play and not need to wash their hands or anything of that. Doesn't bug them. Everything feels good, and that play probably is actually organizing and regulating and bringing joy and excitement. Over-responsive tactily, we're going to have, often we can see our picky eaters in this avenue. We are going to have maybe particularities with preferences for clothes that you're wearing. It's interesting though, with our tactile and visual connection, for picky eaters, if we just link over there real quick. At times, over-responsive visual individuals we may think that they're probably tactily over-responsive because of their picky eating kind of behavior, but it may not be tactile. It may be more visual, because at times, very highly strong visual systems are using their eyes versus their body awareness to understand what elements are supposed to feel like. And so if there is a lack of body awareness, but visual perception comes so easy, then they're going to use that strong capacity to take in their world and make conclusions from it. Which means if chicken nuggets look like McDonald's chicken nuggets, then any other chicken nugget is not a chicken nugget, because visually I know that chicken nuggets are supposed to be square, lightly brown, and visually that's a chicken nugget. So everything else doesn't count, because that's the only type that my eyes say, the only thing that matters, the only thing that's supposed to taste like a chicken nugget. So there might be tactile avoidance or picky eating avoidance because of the visual system, and not necessarily the tactile system. If it's a tactile avoidance, you're going to see more gagging response. You're going to see more differences in clothes, in other experiences as well. So if you're just seeing picky eating, but everything else is coming up without any challenges, then it might be visual and not tactile. Just in the sake of time, I'm going to keep on rolling to vestibular and propen and interoception. So vestibular, our under responders, are going to be our on-the-go kids. Our go, looking for as much movement as possible. So active, just ready to, like sensory seekers could be a word that is often used, and organized by movement experiences. Our over-responders to vestibular input are going to be individuals who are avoidant of all of movement experiences. So proprioception is going to be kind of our universal calm sense. So we really don't see over-responders to proprioception. We do see under-response to proprioception, and that's our body awareness. So that's going to be just not having a strong idea of where we are in space. And so for understanding force, understanding modulation, understanding how much to use when and how to kind of manipulate my body in space is going to be what we would see with under-responsiveness to proprioception. And interoception is going to be just missing signals. So maybe not understanding that you are hungry, so you're seeing hangriness, but that digestion cue of hunger is not signaling neurologically, oh, I'm mad, and so I'm just going to be mad at mom. Oh no, I'm hungry, so I should feel this need of hunger, or I'm thirsty, or I have to have a bowel movement. So there are different signals that that sometimes can be supportive, but can be missed if there's under-responsiveness to interoception. If you're over-responsive to interoception, then small things, the response could be ouch. Pain could be registered quickly. Coming out of the shower into a bathroom that's not as warm as the shower might feel really, really jarring and might feel like pain, because that temperature regulation from hot, steamy shower to a bathroom without that same warm pressure might feel really jarring and feel like too much. That's for our over response to interoception. Any other thoughts around those last three that you guys can relate to? I'm not going to do this video just because a few of the other presenters have shared that there's been some technical issues, but something I just want to connect with is that as we've been talking about, and I'll be wrapping up in the next 5 or 10 minutes, is that we're talking about all these different profiles. And you're already naming your parents and your friends and the people around you. None of us have the same profile, right? And some of you are here for your children to have more strategies for them. So our profiles are not going to be the same as the kids' profiles that we're working with. So it's really important to be thinking about how are we regulated, and then how can we regulate the person that we're with. So if we are overloaded by being in a busy space, but our friend is excited by it, how do we find that middle ground of regulation? Because it's important for us to be regulating ourselves as we are working to regulate our children, or as we're caregiving for them. So something to be thinking through. All of us process information so differently. Has anyone ever heard of the spoon theory? Yeah? I think it's brilliant. I think it's really brilliant. There are many kind of versions of it. Fill your cup theory, different things of that nature. This was created by someone who, I believe the creator has MS. Does that feel right? It was a chronic illness of the original owner of this theory, a neuropsychologist with a chronic illness. But it's grown on into supporting many different diagnoses in all individuals. And it's essentially an idea of energy conservation. And the same sort of idea of all of us have different sensory profiles. All of us use and conserve our energy in different ways. And all of us are interacting with people that we're in relationship with. And so something to think about is different activities requiring a different amount of spoons for different people. So the idea is all of us wake up with 10 spoons. All of us. Different activities require a different number of spoons. So getting out of bed for some of us may require 0 spoons, or it may require 4 spoons from some of us. Energy conservation. How much energy does it take to get out of bed for some of us? Getting dressed, same sort of thing. Going to school. Watching TV may be a way that we can regain some spoons. That may be a way that we get some spoons back through rest. Others, you might lose some spoons. I described this to my son's teacher. He's a first grader. And so often he seems like he wakes up, all of us wake up with 10 spoons, he's waking up with 10 spoons, but to me, he wakes up as Tigger and he wakes up with 100 spoons. I don't know. He wakes up happy, happy, joy, 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 joy. But the minute that we are almost out the door, he still hasn't put his shoes on. I'm yelling. I know we're going to be late. He's so stressed out when I yell. He's lost at least 4 spoons because all of the stress of just getting out the door to get to school. But we scoot to school. So being on a scooter with his sensory needs being met, he just regained 2 spoons. So now he's back at school with 8 spoons because the scooting, Mom and I reconnected, we repaired, we're feeling good. But then reading happened. I don't know how many spoons reading took, but enough. And then math. So maybe he's down to 4 spoons. But then lunch brings it back up. He's socializing with his friends, and then he goes to recess. And then there's the rest of the day when his ADHD sensory-seeking brain has to work so hard just to sit in his seat for the next 3 hours. So when I'm getting him at 4 p.m., I think he has 0 to 1 spoons left. And here I am saying, you got to go do your homework, and we got to go to this person's house. So that's just my example of my home. But I think many of you can relate with whatever diagnosis you're walking through in your home. Energy conservation. All of us have spoons. And all of us have different ways we can use our spoons, regain our spoons, and support each other to make sure we're getting through our day with the spoons we need, right? So I just think this is a really interesting way to think about how we can connect with each other. Okay, last up, if anyone has questions, happy to take them. I also fully realize that's the end of the day, and people are ready to rock and roll and get on out of here. So again, all 8 senses could, it's hard to, give you one specific way to support because there's 100,000 different profiles, right? So there's not a way that I can say, this is what you do for your over-responsiveness. I would say that OTs, this is our bread and butter. So if any of this really resonated with, I think I want to look into more visual processing, or if you already have an OT on your staff, on your team, talk to them through it because this is where we have a lot of our schooling and training in. Very, very generally. Basics responses. For over-responders, routines. Routines are so supportive. It creates predictability. It creates safety. It creates what's about to come next. Creating problem solving for the individual. So when you're in fight or flight, problem solving is too hard. So creating a space where normalizing the environment, I mean finding the way that that individual has the right sensation in the moment. So if loud spaces, busy spaces are too much, desensitizing somehow, finding a smaller, cozier, quieter space. Bridging with regulating sensory input. So the universal regulators, slow, rocking, deep breaths, tight squeezes, weighted blankets, and heavy work. So heavy work is pushing, pulling, squeezing. That's proprioception. So those are kind of our universal supports for over-responders. For under-responders, organized, purposeful, intermittent movement. It's not just go, 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 go. It's stop and starts. Bridging awareness of the environment. So right when we were in the more neurology side, when I was like, we might not have even registered that input. It's narrating what input is in your world. Supporting where the bird is. Look at the tree trunk that has the branches right down in the bottom, and then follow those bottom branches up. That's where the bird is, and the bird is red with a black tip. It's supporting how do we narrate the environment to give more stronger cues to find what we're looking for in that space. Because sometimes we need awareness. Smaller spaces, cozy, calming activities after active, and then again, heavy work. So very, very basic, but something to be thinking through. That's my little guy. He's my sensitive guy. This is my contact if anyone has any further questions. Like I said, I'm local to this area, and that's why they pulled me this way. But local now because of the internet can mean many things. So feel free if you want to reach out. I'd be happy to have any conversations, and happy to have individual questions, or if anyone has questions for the group, happy to do that. And I don't think there's anything on chat, right?
Yeah, there's a couple.
Oh, okay.
Like to know how to find a OT that can evaluate for using hand controls to drive.
That's out of my scope, but if there is a certain area, I'm happy to kind of look into my network of individuals and see if I could support that for someone. So definitely not something that I'm familiar with, but I have credentialing in DIR floor time, which is really beautiful because I have connections all over the globe. So and I really trust individuals and the knowledge base that these individuals have taken on. So I'm happy to, if they reach out and send me an email, I'm happy to check in with my colleagues and see if I could find someone in that area. No other questions popped up?
Sensory processing speed issues are a concern.
SPED, yep.
OT and PT have been instrumental in keeping my son strong. And that's it.
All right. All right, guys. Well, that's all I have. Oh, yeah. Sure thing. Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure the individual who created the spoon theory was someone who had a late diagnosis of MS. I'm pretty sure, but a neuropsychologist with a chronic illness. But it, I think, can be applied to so much, and I just think it's really brilliant way to think about how we can be supporting ourselves and each other. All right, well, thank you guys so much.